Greetings, my friends. Mike Wan here, and it is Gregorian calendar date September 24th, 2025. And I say this a lot, but I think it's true. We got a good one today. If you've been following along for probably the last 4 videos that I've put out, it's almost as if this Charlie Church narrative has landed in our laps at perfect time, or in the perfect timing. And what I mean by that is it really allows us in real time to see what's going on when I talk about shadow realms and occult rituals, because this is a pretty big one. Time will tell how big. And keep in mind, this is still just a mini occulted ritual, because there's a very clear larger one which is always in play, which all of the smaller mini occulted rituals feed into. But what we're going to do today is, it's not so much decode, but we're gonna see what's happening, and we're going to be able to see it in a way which doesn't have an emotional charge. So before we get into it, let's lay some groundwork so we're all on the same page. So we're here, right? You know, you're alive, you're in a body, but it's a mystery. You don't know where here is. You don't know how you got here. I don't know, There are lots of narratives and lots of explanations, but no one knows for certain. But what we can know for certain is how here works. If you pay attention, you can see how it works. And so this is a realm which is consciousness driven. For each of us, we have an inner world and we have a shared outer world. And there is a feedback loop between what goes on in your consciousness, in your mind, in my mind, and the outer world, and they dance. So something else which we know about this realm, and I talked about it in, I think it was the last video, is the fact that this is a shadow realm. And what I mean by that is, though consciousness drives experience or how life unfolds in this realm, much of consciousness is below the threshold of awareness. We don't even realize what we're thinking. And even more so, there is constant communication to each of us and from each of us that exists beneath the threshold. So we're driven by consciousness, but we're not really aware of what we're thinking. And there are players that are purposefully communicating to the shadow realm within yourself in order to drive thought. And that is the whole idea behind what's called occulted ritual. Occulted just means hidden. So let's take a step back. What is ritual? Ritual is a container, if you will, for consciousness. So consciousness in a certain way, or thoughts, they have no shape, let's say. They have no mass, they have no weight. And a means or a technique to take conscious thought. So this is thought that you're aware of. There's subconscious or unconscious thought, and then there's conscious thought that you're aware of. And conscious thought gets shape or is able to take shape or to take form through the container of ritual. And so this would be your own rituals. Whatever the ritual would be, it puts form or provides a form for consciousness. So an occulted ritual is the same thing, but it is done where the participants in the ritual are completely unaware that they're participating in it, or what they think that they're participating in is different than what they actually are participating in. And so within occulted ritual, in order for it to work, in order for it to be effective, you need a lot of participants. And the reason being is when a participant in the occulted ritual is unconscious that they're participating, there's not a lot of power behind it. And so what counterbalances, or how you compensate, this being, when I say you, this being from the driver of the occultic ritual, how you compensate for for participants who don't have a lot of power is you got to get a lot of them. But this is where things get really interesting. And this is where what we're doing right now really has value and weight. Because when you, as an individual, are able to see the occulted ritual for what it is, and not have emotional charge, that's the key to it. You don't have emotional charge. Two things occur. One, within you as the individual, it collapses. So the occulted ritual, you're not participating in it. You're not feeding it. But then secondly, because you are doing it with awareness, and then also without emotional charge, it has a lot of power. And so this idea is more or less expressed or explained in David Hawkins' book, Power versus Force. He's talking about consciousness. He doesn't really talk about occulted ritual in this book, but he lays out the mechanism of consciousness and group consciousness. And basically what he says is that when there is, one individual at a certain level of consciousness, they contain so much, and I'm using the word power with quotation marks around it. They have so much power that they counterbalance, thousands of other people at lower consciousness, at a lower power level. And so by going through this process, by seeing this as it is, without having an emotional charge, there is a counterbalance which is occurring. So just to throw this in before we move on to the next part, is this idea of occulted ritual has really been really probably over the last 20 years, really since 9/11, a larger and larger number of individuals in this realm are beginning to see occulted ritual for what it is. And so there are a lot of people out there, and maybe you're one of them, who see, like, yeah, I know this is a ritual. I can see it. This is a Super Bowl halftime show, all that sort of stuff. But if those individuals are witnessing it with emotional charge, they're angry. Fuck you. Who are you to do this? You're feeding it. So even if you have an awareness, but if you still have an emotional charge, you're feeding it. And if anything, you're maybe even feeding it with greater power than someone who doesn't even realize that they're a participant. So one of the key the key lessons, if you will, of going through this exercise with me right now is to really gain the practice of being able to see things as they are and not have the emotional charge. So there's one other concept I want to get into before we get into the real meat of this presentation. And that is laying out this idea of Trojan horse and Wicker Man. So a Wicker Man and a Trojan horse are two applications of really the same container. And I say container both literally and metaphorically. So what the Trojan horse is, so, you know, I'll go back to the story. It's within Greek mythology. There was a village, and they had like a big protective wall around it. And there's some people, you know, another group of folks who wanted to go and wage war on that village, and they couldn't get into it because the wall was so protective. So what they did was they built this large wooden horse, and they put it on wheels, and it was so big that they were able to fill that wooden horse with all sorts of warriors. And in the middle of the night, a whole bunch of other people, they rolled that wooden horse out in front of the gates of the village, and the people who rolled it ran away. And then the morning came, and then the villagers, they looked out and they see over the wall. They're like, the guards do. They're like, hey, there's a big wooden horse. What the heck's this wooden horse? And they watch it for a little bit, and nothing happens. And the curiosity within the village and all the people grows. And they go out and they open the doors and they start to investigate the wooden horse, and they walk around it and they see that there's really nothing of concern. And they're like, all right, well, you know, what's this wooden horse? What's this gift? And they push it into their village. And once that wooden horse gets in the village, all the warriors on the inside, they jump out and they do their warrior stuff. So that's a wooden horse. So a Wicker Man. Now, a Wicker Man is a large wooden effigy. And so same idea as a wooden horse. So this idea of this large structure to look like a human being is built, and a whole bunch of human beings are put inside this Wicker Man. And the Wicker Man is then lit on fire, and all those people die, and it's done, you know, for, you know, to appease the gods, if you will. And the Wicker Man and the Trojan horse are basically the same thing. They're this, you know, we're talking literal and metaphorical right now, where it's this container which is able to more or less trick or get victims. And the Wicker Man is, well, watch the movie Wicker Man, the original version. It really shows you how the Wicker Man works, or the concept behind it, which is to trick people to go inside the Wicker Man so that they go into it on their own accordance. That's a big part of this Wicker Man and Trojan horse type of modus operandi. And what it is to have whoever the mark of the Wicker Man or the Trojan horse to willfully, you know, you either willfully bring the Trojan horse in, or you willfully go into the Wicker Man to your own demise. And the individuals who are driving the Trojan horse or Wicker Man are taking advantage of someone else's naivete. They don't understand. They don't. They're in over their heads, if you will. And so this idea of Trojan horse and Wicker Man is really, really deep within understanding how, in an actual nuts and bolts way, that modern occult ritual works. Sometimes it's a Wicker Man, sometimes it's a Trojan horse, but it's the same idea. It's the same idea of taking advantage of someone's naivete to get their agreement when they don't realize what they're agreeing to. And so I'm going to come back to that in maybe throughout this video and the video which I have planned to come after that. All right, so without that being said, now we can get into what we're going to talk about. So what I'm going to show you right now is we're going to look at the Charlie Church event, and we're going to see how this occulted ritual is not just a standalone occulted ritual, but it's part of a larger, multiple mini rituals, which are all feeding the one, primary ritual, which oversees this period of time. And so that larger ritual is, and it's always been, it is the alchemical process of merging man with machine. And so that's what it's really about. That's what it's always about. It's like, you look at all the other rituals, you look at 9/11, you look at COVID, you look at all of those things, and you see, what's changed, what hasn't changed. And the one thing that really hasn't changed is the fact that we collectively have continued to move further and further and further along in the adaptation of becoming more and more aligned with technology. So that being said, let's jump right in. So this is the timeline which I used in the last video in the Burning Man Part 2 ritual. And the Burning Man ritual is really I would say it is the most charged or powerful of the occulted rituals that are all kind of linked in together. And Burning Man is quite literally and metaphorically it's a Wicker Man. It's a Wicker Man ritual. And what it was ultimately all about is this idea of Pluto going out of bounds for thousands of years, which began on August 29th. And in the follow-up video to this one is where I'm really going to get into the Pluto portion. But I want you to know that that is what this is about. And the Pluto, the whole Pluto thing is, again, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's all smoke and mirrors grounded on things that are real or tangible. But that's how it works. It works through anchoring. This is a realm where anchoring is an effective technique for influencing the unfoldment of life. All right. But this is what I promised you. I promised you the explanation of the Charlie Church ritual. And I say Charlie Church because the word Kirk is where the word is the Old Norse word for church. So church and Kirk are, they're interchangeable. So this is what we've got going on. So right in the center, this is our map. We've got the Charlie Church, murder. And what I'm not going to get into is my personal opinion of what I think happened. Was he shot? Was it an inside job? Was it AI? Was it this? Was it that? There's lots of people talking about that, and I don't really think that matters. When you really put a lot of energy into that, that becomes feeding. That's feeding it. What I'm doing right now is I'm laying out a larger scope of how this is all interconnected. So we're going to look at the pieces of this puzzle. So we've got Salt Lake City and Orem, Utah. We've got the Charlie Church murder. We've got the shooter, Tyler Robinson. We've got his trans lover. We see the Masonic names that are involved with that. And then the date of September 10th, 2025. And we're going to see how all of this is connected. And what's it connected to? It's connected to, for those of you who recall, there was a pretty big shoot-'em-up story which happened at a Catholic school on September 27th, 2025, by a trans woman shooter by the name of Robin Westman, who also has a Masonic name. We're going to see how that connects to George Floyd. And how George Floyd, you know, we see the connection via death by neck to Charlie Church. And we're going to look at how George Floyd connects into the Burning Man sacrifice, which we talked about, and how the Burning Man sacrifice is connected to Charlie Church, and how Burning Man also is connected to that Burning Man cryptic birth, and that cryptic birth couple is from Salt Lake City. And we see how it is all connected. And it's all connected in a shadow realm. We can easily see how it is, how all of the different points in time, space, and name are feeding one another, and they exist really beneath the threshold because very few people are going to be able to see how they're connected. And all of this, and us talking about it, what we're doing is we're collapsing it. We're seeing it for what it is. And what all of this is really about. Like, yes, this is, you know, we'll see what comes out of this. We'll see what's going to come out of this. Maybe nothing, maybe something. But undoubtedly, what this is really about, this is the big ritual, is the Burning Man ritual. Like, I mean, that is a in-your-face burning Wicker Man, and that is tied to this Pluto going out of bounds. All of this is feeding that. So let's go into this. So as a reminder, you know, it was called the Annunciation Catholic Church shooting. It took place on August 27th, 2025, and it was in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And this was the same day, if you recall, and we talked about this in 2 videos, of the Burning Man baby. And what was so interesting in the telling of the Burning Man baby story was the fact that the couple didn't even know that they were pregnant. They called it a cryptic birth. And that couple is from Salt Lake City. So we see that this is connected on the same day. And when you go and you look at the Wikipedia history of the Annunciation Catholic Church and Catholic school, and keep in mind, Wikipedia is the given mechanism of relaying appropriate information for the masses. That's what it is. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's telling you the truth or not truth, or the full story or not the full story. But we can still use Wikipedia very effectively because they're telling you what they want you to know. And one of the things which they want you to know is the fact that the church, the parish community, held their first mass in 1922, and then on September 10th, 1923, the Annunciation School opened up for business. September 10th. We got dates again because September 10th is the Charlie Church. Charlie Church, Catholic Church. Okay. So let's go a little bit deeper. So who was the shooter in this Annunciation Church shooting? And that was a trans woman by the name of Robin Westman. Okay. So let's go back to who is being credited in the mainstream media of doing the shooting, and that is Tyler Robinson. And we're going to put to the side the fact that Tyler Robinson probably did not do the shooting. We don't even know if there was a shooting, but what we do know for certain is what is being pushed out to the masses. There is enough information which is there to capture those who want to get to the bottom of what really happened. And maybe there's some value to that. But what we're interested in right now is being able to see this outside of the feedback loop of this story. We're just going to see it for what it is. So, all right. Tyler Robinson and Robin Westman. Like, obviously, Robin is the connective tissue, the connective phonetic tissue in these names, right? Robin and stealing. We could go a lot into Robin, but for now, well, because we've got so much to unfold or unpack, we're just going to recognize that Robin is a subliminal shadow link, which is telling everyone, like, these guys, these shooters are connected, all right? And then we can even see, like, what's also embedded in this. We've got, like, man, and we've got son, right? Man and son, father and son, chip off the old block. And then we've got Tyler, and we've got Westman, and we've got West. We've got Tyler and West. And so we know that Robin Westman is certainly is a trans woman, right? And then we're told that Tyler Robinson, no, he's not a trans woman, but he is in a relationship with a trans woman. This is our Tyler Robinson, and this is his girlfriend right here. And they're making a big story about this. Or this is part of the container to capture emotion, regardless of how an individual personally feels about trans. It's going to capture it. Whether you think that it's an abomination or you think that it is an expression of enlightenment, it doesn't matter. If there's an emotional charge to it, it feeds it. Okay. Transhuman, trans woman, transient. So this is just a temporary pivot. Who here remembers this story when it was told in Columbine? All right. We got right here, we got Tyler Robinson, we got Robin Westman, and here's Tyler Robinson. And I remember when this version was told with Dylan and Eric. One of the things which is very common right now in Hollywood mainstream dream making is the remaking of told stories. The remaking of Freaky Friday, the remaking of all of these stories where they are showing the modern actor or actresses replaying the actor and actresses who played the same story some time before. And if you spend some time and you look at this, you look at the faces and even you play with the names, like you've got a Y-L-E-R, you got a Y-L-E-R right there. I mean, I don't know. You can see, you can see the modus operandi all around. But we're going to continue to move forward. So I've seen this a lot in other people talking about the Charlie Church shooting murder and the unpacking of it from this is a Freemasonic ritual. And, there's some real truth to that. And particularly going back to how this ties into the JFK King Kill 33 analysis of the King Kill 33 JFK shooting analysis. But that was done by Shelby Downard. I would say really insightful, if you've never actually read King Kill 33, go ahead and read that. You can find that online. And keep in mind, I think that came out in like the 70s. That is really the birthplace of a lot of this understanding of occultic ritual. So you want to go back and understand how that was first presented and see how collectively our understanding of occulted ritual is has grown. And then also what's his name, Miles something or other, his analysis of the JFK ritual, like looking at those two perspectives, maybe not saying that either one of them is absolutely perfect, but allowing what the authors of those two perspectives to kind of allow that to increase your understanding of looking at what's happening right now. But anyway, so going back to the point here. So there's been a lot of talk about how Tyler, the name Tyler, ties directly into Freemasonry. And so Tyler is the officer who guards the door of the lodge. So then the question is, you know, we're looking at this connection, or I'm suggesting that there's a connection here. And the question then becomes like, well, then who is the West Man? Who is the West Man? Well, let's go back into Freemasonry. So within Freemasonry, and keep in mind, I'm no Freemason. You know, I am familiar with what they tell us about Freemasonry, which is publicly available. That's what my knowledge of Freemasonry is. In Freemasonry, the senior warden, so the senior warden is the number 2 in terms of hierarchy within a Masonic lodge. The number 1 would be the, I think it's called the Worshipful Master. And then the number 2 is the senior warden. And his job or his responsibility is to be the guardian of the West Gate. Everything within Freemasonry is symbolic and it's ritualistic. So ritualistic is enacting symbolism. We talked about what ritual is. Ritual is a container for consciousness, and ritual works by symbolism. Symbolism deals with anchoring. When you begin to understand how this realm works with anchoring and symbolism and hypnosis and shadow, we might not know what this realm is, but we can know how it works. So the senior warden, his job, his role, his symbol is the guardian of the West Gate. In Freemasonry, the role of guardian of the West Gate is primarily performed by the Tyler, but the symbol of the West Gate is the senior warden. All right, so we see that Tyler and West Gate are related, and the guardian or the Westman is a senior warden. Tyler and the Westman are linked. The relationship between the Tyler and the senior warden in Freemasonry is one of reporting structure and shared security. So, you know, these two individuals by name are connected to, you know, protecting the ritual, if you will. So let's go a little bit deeper with this. In Freemasonry, the element associated with the West Gate, associated with the direction of the West and what the West represents, is water. And this isn't just in Freemasonry. You'll see in many other spiritual practices, water as an element corresponds, is linked to, is anchored to the West, which to me implies that there is a commonality between all of those different practices which utilize water in the West, because water has no inherent natural intrinsic value to the West, but it has been anchored to that. But nonetheless, this is where I want to go to right now. The name Minneapolis means city of waters. So the fact that we've got Westman, right? We've got the Westman, who is in Minneapolis, the city of water. And Westman, we know that Westman is connected to Tyler. And we see that Westman and Tyler are just like connected in so many different ways. Like, it's just self-evident, right? You know, you see it. Like, you see it for what it is. It's just laid out for you. So, speaking of Minneapolis, we talked about George Floyd. So this is where the George Floyd Square is. This is where the George Floyd murder occurred. It happened right here in Minneapolis. And that is, it's not in the same neighborhood. It's 2.3 miles away. And 2.3 miles in a urban setting is, you know, it could be a world apart. But Minneapolis is a big city. 2 miles apart is, at least in geography, it's very, very close. And this location right here is where the Annunciation Church takes place. So we all remember George Floyd. I Can't Breathe. George Floyd occurred on May 25th, 2020, Memorial Day, I think it was. And George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd is another neck wound. You know, George Floyd was said murdered by one of the three ruffians, one of the three police officers who placed his knee upon George Floyd's neck, which led to his death. Much was written and talked about at the time of George Floyd. And keep in mind, the George Floyd event was in linear time connected directly with COVID. Right after the lockdown of COVID was opened up and life in the United States kind of started coming back to normal, where people were allowed out of their houses, then all of a sudden the George Floyd thing hit right when summer came about. Like, it was perfectly timed. And at the time, there was a lot of analysis of the George Floyd murder as being a Masonic event in a similar fashion as King Kill 333, and particularly tied to this idea of the three ruffians and the Hiram Abiff legend and ritual within Freemasonry. So you could go and read that if you're interested in that, or if that's new to you. So George Floyd. So we can see that George Floyd is connected to the Charlie Church, through the Minneapolis, the City of the Water connection. We've kind of demonstrated that. And George Floyd connects to Burning Man through the letters of BLM. Following the George Floyd event, Black Lives Matter became a really big phrase throughout definitely American culture, and it was filled with emotion. BLM, Black Lives Matter, and within the Burning Man ritual, that's what it is. It's an annual ritual. BLM is also very significant. It is, but it stands for something different. It stands for the Bureau of Land Management. And it's a really kind of interesting sort of overlap, because particularly in the earlier Burning Man rituals, before cannabis became the legal thing which it is currently, it used to be demonized. And, you know, there was, like, Burning Man is more or less like an open drug experience. And it was allowed by the government, which seemingly is against the use of drugs, but for this one instance, it's allowed to happen. And the mechanism of how that was allowed to happen and how it was policed was through this BLM, Bureau of Land Management relationship with Burning Man. Without getting any deeper into that. But we know that BLM as letters, it plays in both of them. And BLM and I don't want to get too deep into this. This has a connection to these two different BLMs, Balaam and Balaam. One is a demon in Christian demonology of one of the kings of hell, and Balaam oversees the 40 different 40 legions of demons. And then the other one is spelled with two A's. The demon is spelled with one A, is a non-Israelite prophet with powers, but was used by God to bless the Israelites instead of cursing them. Within Hebrew, at least written Hebrew, the vowels are not listed. So just the consonants. So BLM, is conceptually corresponds to all of this, whatever that may mean to you. But this is part of the linkage of what we see is between George Floyd and Burning Man. And we also see here, that all three of these, this is Charlie Church. He died by being shot in the neck. And this here is Vadim. I don't remember his last name. This is the young man who had his neck slit at the moment of the burning of the Wicker Man on August 30th, 2025. He died of a neck injury. And then we've got George Floyd, who died of a stomping of his neck. And we can see that, this connects by date, September 10th, to the Charlie Church, connects to the Annunciation School. And interestingly enough, that the day count between May 25th, 2020 and August 30th, 2025 is 1923. Again, we can see on the sub rosa level, we see in the subconscious level, we can see the connection of between all of these events. So, slicing of the throat, that is deep within Masonic symbology. It's also deep within Mormon symbology, Salt Lake City, right? It's typically used as a threat to keep secrets, but what I think my opinion at least of the use of the neck here is more so a reminder of one's oath. And that's probably not so much to the players involved as much as it is a subconscious reminder to all of the actors who are holding these occulted rituals in place, really the subconscious witnesses. But then the last piece, which I really want to bring into this and how this goes full circle, is, and I said this again, was how the couple that had the cryptic birth at Burning Man, whose cryptic birth was on August 27th, the same day as the shooting in the Annunciation Church in Minneapolis. This couple is from Salt Lake City. And the Charlie Church event did not take place in Salt Lake City exactly. It took place in Orem, but from the perspective of the paradigm, Orem and Salt Lake City are part of the same combined statistical area. And it is through this, under this grouping together of cities and named places through statistical areas, which the paradigm uses to organize and regulate, the system. But what I said here, what I promised, like all of that takes place, like all of it's there. There's really not anything more that needs to be added into it. Like you could go deeper and deeper and deeper and see more connections and more connections. And all that's going to do is further confirm what we already know, is that these are all connected. And you could probably go and look at other events and see how they're connected, because it's all a big friggin' web. They're all connected. The point isn't necessarily to get caught in that web. The caught is to be able to see the web for what it is and not to be emotionally charged. And if anything, to be able to laugh at it. But the real reminder, the real purpose of all of this of me pointing this out, is the fact that all of that web, like, it will likely, it's very possible that this Charlie Church event is going to be the justification for other things. It certainly seemed like the events of George Floyd were being used at the time to drive civil unrest and possible civil war. Didn't happen. At least at the moment of recording this video, like that same feeling is in play of like, is this the beginning of a civil war? Time will tell. Who knows? But often what all of this is about is really just to keep people in a certain state, to keep the masses in a certain state. If I was a betting man, I think that's probably what's going to happen. But, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. We, as witnesses of this video, of people who are able to see things as they are, we are able to witness this and observe this, because in this realm, the observer changes the outcome of the experiment. We are able to see this without charge. And by seeing it without charge, we are affecting it in a different way. And we realize that all of this is really pointing to Pluto. And so that's the next video, is what Pluto is about. And what Pluto is really about is the drive or the anchoring to a bigger ritual, which is the alchemical merging of man and machine. And doing that under the false guise of the Age of Aquarius. That's what all that's about. In the next video, I'm going to go into what this whole thing of Pluto out of bounds means. We're going to pull that apart. But before that, I got a little special treat for you. I'm going to go and show you, a video, one of the videos, one of the modules from the Grounding Consciousness course, because one of the videos is a case study of Pluto. And the reason why we're doing that is we're going to deconstruct Pluto, because all of this is anchoring. And so I'm going to show you parts of this video right now. So let's go and shift to that. All right. So this is the video for module 27, actually, in the Grounding Consciousness course, and it's planetary case study Pluto. So the voice you hear next is going to be mine, but it is mine from the video. I chose Chiron in the fact that it was discovered relatively recent past. Pluto was discovered in 1930. And so there was a point where Pluto was not part of the astrological world. People have been following astrology for thousands of years and been very knowledgeable and committed to it. And every natal chart prior to 1930 did not include Pluto. Does that mean Pluto did not play into it?
Pluto was discovered in 1930 and was long considered our solar system's ninth planet. Pluto is really interesting because it goes back and forth between being a planet or not, but we won't discuss that right now. This is what I want to talk about. Pluto was named by an 11-year-old girl from England. Let's get into the mindset, like 1930s. Suddenly, across the wires, across the newspapers, brand new planet discovered. That was a big deal. Everyone's excited about it. Brand new planet is discovered, and then, as opposed to what we saw with Chiron, where the man who discovered it named it, what happened with Pluto was the astronomical body put out a worldwide call. They said, we discovered this planet, and if you got an idea for a name, you submit it in, and our panel of blue ribbon judges are going to pick a name. And that's going to be the name of this new planet. And, we're on the cutting edge of a new world and new frontiers in front of us. So the whole world is really, really excited. And then an 11-year-old girl from England came up with this great idea. And she's like, I think we should name it Pluto. And she came up with it, the idea, over breakfast talking to her grandfather. And the world was just friggin' inspired by this story, and particularly children, probably children around the ages of 11. If you really think about at what age are you most fascinated and are in awe potentially of the mysteries of the heavens, it's going to probably be around that pre-adolescent time period. Your mental faculties are developed enough that you're thinking and you're speaking and you could do math and you understand grammar and all this sort of stuff. But maybe you haven't really been caught up into all of the excitement of members of the opposite sex. And so 10 and 11 and 12, you're just loving all of this stuff about a new planet and the potentialities of what's in outer space. And when you find out someone just like you came up with the name, that pulls you in. This is known as propaganda. Like this type of technique of understanding how people work and creating stories around it to get them emotionally involved. These are the cornerstones of creating copy and stories that connect to people's hearts and minds. And I'm going to suggest to you this whole thing about naming Pluto is a huge public relations program. So Valerie Fair, that's her name, was an accountant and taught economics and math in England, and she was best remembered for what she accomplished at age 11, giving Pluto its name. And this was an interview with her with NASA in January 2006, and she basically tells the story of how she came up with the name Pluto over breakfast with her mother and her grandfather. This grandfather who Venetia was having her breakfast with just wasn't any grandfather. He was the head librarian of one of the world's most important libraries, the Bodleian at Oxford. So Oxford has lots of libraries, and its primary library is the Bodleian, and the head librarian of all of the librarians was this girl's grandfather. This is where, if you're familiar with Francis Bacon, when they talk about the Invisible College and how the Royal Society was founded by Bacon's cohorts as a living tribute to the Invisible College, it happened in this library, the Bodleian. That is how influential this library is in terms of the thinkers and shapers of the world. And the 11-year-old granddaughter of the head librarian came up with the name Pluto, which then the astronomer class agreed that, of course, yeah, great idea. Venetia, that's definitely going to be the name we're going to use. The Bodleian libraries are the most celebrated in the world, not only for their incomparable collections of books and manuscripts, but for the buildings themselves. This is the entranceway. And also keep in mind, her father wasn't just any father, but he was a biblical scholar and the authority of the Bible in the United Kingdom, as he was the theological chair at Oxford. Her father was the Oriel professor of the interpretation of the Holy Scripture at Oxford. That was his job. This guy was an expert in Babylonian cuneiform. She comes from a family which still could read the Babylonian manuscripts from when they first laid out the zodiac, or at least introduced it to us. This is the same line. These are the same teachings and peoples. In Israel's settlement in Canaan, her father, he brought much newly applied materials, especially from Babylonian sources. It's his daughter who came up with the name Pluto. These naming, how does the name influence the astrological meaning? I don't know. Is this built into the astrology? Maybe, maybe not. But this girl who named Pluto, her family is part of the intelligentsia that rules and controls and holds the paradigm in place. And her mother wasn't just any mother. She was a world-renowned Egyptologist. Her mother was Ethel Woodsworth Madden. She was with this other lady, and they were known as the two ladies, as they were known, and they traveled throughout the Middle East and the rest of the world until the late 1960s, visiting digs, museums, and collections. This is straight up Indiana Jones sort of stuff. And you're told, as you're drinking your Ovaltine, that an 11-year-old girl talking to her grandfather came up with the name of Pluto over breakfast. Her uncle named two of Mars's moons. The story is just not as simple as breakfast, and the astrological world has never been the same. So let's switch gears a little bit. In a 1-2 punch aimed at capturing children's imaginations towards Pluto.
All right, friends, I'm going to stop that right there. That's where it gets really good. We get into Disney stuff. And the point I'm showing, the point for the reason I'm showing that video right now is because we're going to deconstruct Pluto, so that when we look at what they're saying about Pluto in the next video, we're going to realize that it's all part of the same sort of story which is being told. So this is what I'm going to suggest for you guys. I want you to go to my Gumroad account, and I need you to go and get the Grounding Consciousness course. I put a lot of effort into it. That is not just the material, but then also the editing of it. It is important, both for you to understand this information, but, it's also important for me because this is the way that I'm able to continue to do what I'm able to do. I priced it very consciously. It's priced at $119. I made it affordable. There's a lot of courses out there where the material is, it's just shitty courses, and they're charging close to $1,000. This is affordable. And I'm also playing the same game they play. You're going to go and link 911 to an emergency. I'm going to go and I'm not going to use the inversion of 911 because that would make it less than a penny, but I'm going to reverse it because the information here is meant to be the opposite of an emergency. It is the balm to an emergency. So when I taught the course, when I was doing this course live, and I charged a whole lot more money to be a participant in the course than this, I opened it to anyone who was interested, whether they could afford it or not. If you couldn't afford the class, but you wanted to take the class, I said, what can you afford? I had some people who came to the class who paid $20. I had some people who came to the class who paid double the amount. It all balances out. And so the same is true right now. If $119 is really outside of your budget, if you can't do that, and I get it, I've literally lived the last 3 years bringing in less than $10,000 a year. I live a really good life, but I don't have a lot of money. I get what it's like not to have a lot of money. But currency is part of what we need to interact with in this paradigm, if we're going to at least be participants within them. If you can't rub together $119, send me an email. Tell me what you can. I'm going to get you this information. All right, my friends. So the next video, we're going to go into Pluto. Watch. If you go in and once you go and you get this course, go skip to module 27. See the end of this, because we're going to lean the end of the video I just showed you. We're going to lean into Pluto, and we're going to deconstruct, and we're going to deconstruct Pluto. We're going to deconstruct what they're saying is happening, so that we can find ourselves and be grounded in the most real that we can actually know in this shadow realm mystery. So until the next time, this is Mike Wan, and I really hope that I hear from a bunch of you. Take good care.